So this is XM1186, or the general purpose round, or 120 grain EPR. 3053, 3069.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the range. My name is Matt, also known as the King of Armor Destruction, Armor Wizard, Zap. We have a body armor demo today. This should be the first one for 2026, the one that I've actually recorded in 2026. This is from AR500 Armor. This is their A4 line. This particular set of steel core body armor boasts some insane threat stoppages, including our M80A1. Let's take a closer look at this on the table and see what we have in store today. Now, in full transparency, AR500 Armor sent these to me back around November at the end of my shooting season, and we've been waiting for warmer weather. I do have an affiliate set up with them. That means I have a link in the description below, and if you decide through your own volition to purchase this armor and you want to say thank you to the channel, that's what those links are there for. I'm not here to steer you either way, just to provide you with general information so you can make better buying decisions. So we have two of the A4 line here. We have our standard coating, and then we have the build-up coating. Our build-up coating is a little chunky at 9.475 pounds or 4.928 kilograms. It's only 584 thousandths thick or 14.83 millimeters. The standard coating is about a pound less at 8.435 or 3.826 kilograms, and it is a lot thinner at 345 thousandths or 8.763 millimeters. These are only single curve. That is one of the caveats to some steel body armor, is it's either flat with no curves or single curve. There are some multi-curve steel core body armors, but they're not as curvy as some of our composites, so we just have that one general rolling curve there, and usually that means it may fit certain body types better. My particular body type, I feel, is very beneficial for multi-curve. It takes a lot of that weight off of the shoulders. Now, if this is the first time you're viewing my YouTube channel, we do all of our body armor demos completely different than almost everyone else on YouTube. We're after worst case scenario. Rewind that 10 seconds and say it again, everyone. We're after worst case scenario. Since this is rifle armor, we're going to be shooting at 45 feet and 0 degrees, again, because that's worst case scenario. We also put a spreadsheet here at the beginning and the end that we foreshadow all the threats that we're going to shoot at it. At the end, we do a tear down, we mark the velocities and our penetrations, and then we send you on your merry way. I do want to remind everyone that I am not an NIJ lab, so as much as this that I try to mimic as an NIJ lab, I am not a substitute for them. So if you see some kind of threat stopped or pass through, you should always defer to the manufacturer to produce accredited, recent, and frequent lab results showing those stoppages. On the flip side, if you're the manufacturer and you see me stop our XM1186 out of a 16-inch barrel, you should send that off to a lab and have that added as a special rifle threat to your panel. And again, one other caveat is I'm out here doing this as a hobbyist. I have a limited amount of plates to perform this on. So if you see some kind of pass through after the 7th or 8th shot, don't always assume that the plate is not good quality. It's just I'm stretching my dollars as thin as possible. Plate number 1 is strapped in and ready to go. This is the standard build-up coat. If you follow me for a long time, you know that steel armor can be advantageous for multi-hit scenarios, but where it tends to fall short is the coating that is supposed to hold the fragmentation that comes off. So we're going to start this off right with our M80 ball. This is 7.62 NATO, 147, 150 grain full metal jacket. This particular one is unique because the jacket is bimetal. 2791, 2785 off the Rangecraft. Now this is where it'll get a little bit spicy. Traditionally in the past, steel armor is good at stopping our M855 SS109, but it's done not so hot against our M193. That's a 55 grain full metal jacket. This is where a little bit of that velocity plays into effect, along with bullet construction, that usually the velocity that it can achieve is higher than the threshold of the steel can handle. First shot at the top of the plate. Oh! 3412. Here is our M855. 3060, 3068. Nice. Solid velocities off that for a 16-inch. All right, this is easy enough to see because steel armor doesn't have anything else inside of it. It's not composite. So you can see all the strikes on here are M80 ball number 1, 2, and then 3
Then the M193 from the 22 inch was 3,400 feet per second. That's 200 feet or 150 feet per second over the NIJ spec, and that popped through. So then we went to the M855 from our 22 inch 1, 2, 3, and 4. There are no pass-throughs. Then we brought out the 16 inch for the M193 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there are no pass-throughs in that. So we'll go up to the 20 inch in the next one. And then as far as back face is concerned with steel armor, you're still getting back face. You can see that the plate outline is being pushed back into clay. Clay is pretty warm, but we're not seeing localized back face like we would with composite armor, where like if you got hit here, there'd be that dimple in the clay, and you're allowed up to 44 millimeters. So that's more spread out on that one, but not too shabby if I do say so myself. Typically in the past, the M193, even from the 16 inch, has been a problem.
Plate number 2 is strapped in. This is the build-up coat. We're gonna go along the same lines as plate number 1. We're gonna start off with M80 ball, but we're gonna increase the barrel length to 24 inches, and we should see 200 to 300 feet per second over what we were seeing before. This is kind of that extreme end of things because there are 24 and 26 inch barrels that exist in 308. We have the CMMG 030. We'll put this shot towards the top of the plate. Woo! Smoking fast velocities, folks.
Back to our 5.56 threats, we've got out the 20 inch. This is a Palmetto State Armory upper with the FN premium barrel. Got a Rex Selenium can up front. Got that from Chapel Hills. Big thank you to them for helping us with that. So we've got our M193 again. That's just some IMI surplus. And then we have our Lake City M855A1. That's the 62 grain enhanced performance round, copper. As you folks can see, our coating is taking a beating, and so is my clay briefcase. I really should regulate steel armor when I do it to my older briefcase because it's just eating into my clay, and this clay is very expensive. And this coating actually came off this plate after those 3 hits of M80 ball. Now, in AR500 Armor's defense, I shot those on the outer perimeter, and like I said, those fragments come off that way and they will spread that coating. So here are our remaining shots: M80 number 1, 2, and then 3. Then our M193 from the 20 inch number 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Those were all within specification and some over spec. They were stopped. So it looks to be about that 3,250 to 3,300 feet per second is the limit on M193. Our A1 was a little more inconsistent though. That first and third shot were stopped, even though they're in close proximity. But the second, fourth, and then fifth shot popped through. Now, this could be argued that this is a somewhat little weaker area because of the previous shots. So we came back and shot 2 more down here, passed through, and that one passed through. So that 20 inch is a limit for the M855A1. Now, there is a lot of current discussion about newer offerings from the U.S. military called HICAR, the hypervelocity, or using our hybrid steel case technology to be able to bump up the pressure and extended range of our ammunition for troops. So nobody knows what that actual velocity figures are, but consider it an M855A1 plus P plus out of shorter barrel length. That's what we simulate with 22 Creedmoor. So we won't be able to go there today with that particular loading, but I wonder what we can do with M855.
Now this is where we get to have a little bit of fun. AR500 Armor rates the A4 for M80A1. That's the big brother to M855A1. 130 grains. .2803, 2790. .2837, 2827, 2790 something off the light screen.
All right, easy enough on these guys. Shots number 1, 2, and then 3. Then our 16-inch shots number 1 and then number 2. Again, because this is not composite armor, you can see this just as clearly as I can. R.A.N.G.E. We had 2 pass-throughs from the 16-inch, but at 2,700 feet per second plus, mind you, those 3 rounds were stopped on this plate. So that's pretty impressive for a steel offering, because that is a hard projectile to stop, especially once you add mass and velocity behind it.
All right, speaking of hyper velocity ammunition, you know what this is. This is 6.8 by 51 millimeters, or 277 Sig Fury. So this is XM1186, or the general purpose round, or 120 grain EPR. Think of M855A1 or M80A1. Now this is the Gen 1 variant. This could be, you know, during the trials bullet. This is not the actual bullet that they're currently fielding. This is a hand load. So I've done this to try to see what kind of velocity where XM1186 may take over M80A1. The penetrator on this particular bullet is almost as long as the entire M80A1 bullet. 2670, 2668, 2743, 2735. Not sure what the light screen read. You guys can see that. 2761. So we're right in spec of where M80A1 is rated at this plate. 3018, 3023, 3078. 3053, 3069.
And turn it around. Well, folks, I will say this is some tough steel. So our 6.8 reduced charge at 2,700 feet per second, number 1, 2, and then 3. There are no pass-throughs. Then we stepped up the charge right around 3,000 feet per second, 1, 2, and then 3. Now you could argue that this kind of weakened the steel maybe a little bit right there, but we have a pass-through on that third one, R.A.N.G.E. But this steel is turning out to be pretty darn amazing. Now it is a little heavier than you would consider for level 3 plus or RF1 and 2. You're more in that heavier level 4 category, but it's really hard to argue the multi-hit capability of a steel panel. The downsides, like I've mentioned, are the fragmentation coating. There are ways to mitigate that through adding a frag sleeve, and being that your carrier itself is 500D or 1000D Cordura, that's going to stop some of that fragmentation, but it's just something to consider. I think the only other downside is that this is only in single curve, and some people may not find that comfortable, but these are thinner than most of your composite offerings.
This is our Sig Cross. This has a 20-inch barrel and is chambered in 277 Fury or 6.8. This is a very lightweight package hunting rifle. We've got the new Arkin Optics EPL 4 to 16 power scope up there. We haven't got it dialed in yet, but we should be close at 25 yards with this, hopefully. Famous last words, right? This is the 113 grain reduced range ammunition that is primary for target practice and plinking. .34-22, 34-35. Now, if you guys follow me on YouTube and the community posts, I had posted the other day that I actually smoked my 3/8 AR500 Armor targets with these, not AR500 Armor brand, but just the quality of steel, sighting this thing in because I didn't know how fast they were going. So if these plates stop it, that's going to be amazing. All right, now we can bring out some ludicrous speed, my version of high car. This is our 22 Creedmoor. We've got our M855 SS109, and then we actually have some 27 grain SS195, 198 bullets from 5.7. We'll put these on there and see what we get. .35-77. .35-83. So those are smoking hot, boys and girls.
Ooh, some suspense is building. Now you can't see anything through this coating because I put it back in front of here, but our 6.8 RRA round, number 1, 2, and then 3. That one round of our 28 grain OTM was right there. I don't know where the second shot went unless I just completely disintegrated the bullet. We'll have to try to look at the shots to see if it even landed on there. But then we put those 4 shots of M855 on there. Velocity was over 3,500 feet per second, depending on which chronograph. Place those bets in the comments below. No pass-throughs, folks. You can see that shot of that 28 grain OTM down there barely did anything to the steel. Now we did get a little bit of dimpling from these 6.8 rounds, and then our M855 did take a chunk out of them in a couple spots, but to prove there are no pass-throughs on the back of that plate whatsoever. So if you were looking for huge multi-hit capability in an up armor without going to a thick level 4 and steel was your thing, these would be very, very hard not to look at. I wonder if they could offer them in multi-curve, although that comes with its own nuance, because I think if you bend them too much, it may be possible to make them not as effective as, say, the single curve. But with all that being said, I think we're done here, folks. Great job, AR500 Armor.
Now, for a fan favorite, the teardown. That's where we get to look at the guts of these plates and offer any constructive criticism. Although this is steel core body armor, not a composite, so there's really not a whole lot to look at that you already didn't see in the close-ups. But we talk about being high hardness steel, and then at some point, once you get over that, like AR600, it starts to become brittle, so you're able to stop things, but it may not last as long and it may start to shatter. We've seen that with some other brands in the past, and we actually saw it with this plate today. After all these shots of our 308 and 6.8 on this actually cracked down here, which is kind of interesting because most of the shots were up here, but for whatever reason, how that energy travels through that steel, it ended up down here. It must have been a weak area. We didn't note any other pass-throughs on this armor. It seems like this is a good piece of steel if you're looking for true high count multi-hit capability with some obscure threats. M193 is still going to be a consideration for it, but we were able to stop it at the NIJ spec for RF1 and 2. It wasn't until we threw that one right there at the first shot at 3,400 feet per second that it went through. But that's about all I have for you folks. The fragmentation, coating, or mitigation seems to always be a concern. But again, I'm shooting this as worst case scenario without it being in a plate carrier. So this coating is only going to do so much, but your carrier should be sufficiently thick enough to stop some of that fragmentation. Well, folks, we'll put a bow on that and send it on its merry way. That wraps up a test of our AR500 Armor, or Armor Republic A4 body armor test. I think overall this steel did a very good showing of all of our threats that we were able to throw at it. I mean, we pretty much threw the kitchen sink at it. The only thing that it had trouble with was velocity, and that was our M193. We were able to pelt this thing with our M80A1 at the spec velocity that they stated, and it was able to stop it. There is, I think, only one other manufacturer that currently rates their level 3+ plate at stopping M80A1. That is a ceramic composite plate. We're able to even stop our 6.8 until we cranked up the velocity. Even when we cranked it up to that 113 grain RRA load, it was able to stop that. And we even brought out the 22 Creedmoor, and we were slinging M855 at those high car velocities, theoretical anyways, of 3,500 feet per second, and we were able to stop it. Now the M855A1 is a different story. It seems to be right around the 3,150 to 3,200 feet per second. So in the real world, those velocity figures are going to be a lot less, but again, I'm after worst case scenario, so that if we stop it out of the longest barrel length that I'm able to obtain, you know that without a shadow of a doubt in the real world, that's going to stop it. Ultimately, I think the biggest holdback, not only for this A4 plate, but steel armor in general, is a majority of it is either flat and or single curve. There's not a lot of multi-curve plates out there available, and when they are multi-curve, they're not as curvy as our composite plates. And then some of these steel offerings do start tipping the scales to where you really have to weigh your dollars to know whether you should go with a composite or this one, because they run about the same price. And that is really up to you as a consumer to decide whether you want something like this or you want to go to a composite. We're shown that this thing is very, very multi-hit capable, and localized back face with steel isn't as much of a concern as it is with composite plates. With all that being said, it's time for me to get the heck out of here. But at the end of all my videos, I take a moment to thank all those who helped make these possible, because there's a lot that goes into all this stuff. Number one is my family. A big thank you to Amy and Deacon, who are always out here helping me in any way they can. Deacon would like to remind you all to like, subscribe, comment, and share these videos, whether on YouTube or other platforms, because it helps that algorithm put me in front of more people. I am a smaller channel, and I'm not as entertainment driven as some. I'm more of that data guy. But the more views we can get on a lot of these videos, the better my channel can do. Number two are my YouTube and Patreon supporters. Number three are the fine folks over at AR500 Armor, or Armor Republic. Again, in full transparency, sent me these A4 plates to demo with no strings attached. Number four is an honorable mention, Sig Sauer, giving me industry pricing on picking up some of their firearms. So I want to test some of this new and upcoming technology like our 6.8. I can have that wide variety of barrel lengths to perform tests on, and it does come in handy. And of course, number five is you all for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you at the range. Now, this is something I'm trying different for 2026. I'm putting all of the testing protocol or nerd data here at the end. We use a giant clay briefcase filled with Romoplastilene, a #1 clay from Chavant. It's the same clay that the NIJ uses, but they get to heat it in an environmental chamber or an oven, and they're only allowed to take it out for, I do believe, an hour. It's around 75 degrees outside today, and so once I take that out of there, it's going to start cooling to ambient. So we're looking at a representation of what back face could be. If you see something like 70 to 80 millimeters of my clay, that likely would be failing on the NIJ's eyes. Since this is steel core body armor, we do not need to drop each plate on its face 2 times as a preconditioning test. I don't have any way to do any of the environmental preconditioning like soaking it in water or storing it at a certain temperature, so it's pretty much been at ambient. We have various different chronographs to collect our velocity, because we need to know the velocity of these projectiles when they strike the armor, because velocity is a important factor in deciding some of these penetrations. There's also mass and bullet construction that come into play, but for a lot of times armor, velocity is king. We have our Proconal PAL Digital DLX, as well as our Garmin 0C1 and our Athlon Optics Rangecraft. So we have 3 data sets there. We can take the average. So if we see some kind of outlier, we know whether to blame the chronograph or potentially that we have a round that for whatever reason had more pressure than the other one. Number